Well, of course, the opening chapters of Genesis cover the creation of the world. That's large, but for the most part, the historical sections of the Bible cover a very small area, essentially what is today's Israel.
We've known for many years that in Arabic and in Hebrew, the name Nahom, which is the name of the place where Ishmael died and was buried in 1 Nephi chapter 16, is related to the Semitic roots meaning to mourn, to sorrow, to suffer. But what a team of German archaeologists found, and other LDS scholars have dealt with in great detail, is that a few years ago the name Nahom was found on 3 Katabanian inscriptions on altars in northeastern Yemen, exactly at the point where one would expect to find Lehi and his party turning in a near easterly direction and moving across the Arabian Peninsula. That's the place where the Book of Mormon says that Ishmael dies and was buried. We now know from this record that there was a place in these inscriptions known as Nahom in the time of Lehi in precisely that region.
It's possible that Joseph Smith lucked out in Nahom. You can never rule that out absolutely, but it seems to me the odds are vanishingly low. It has to be understood that for about 50 years, since Hugh Nibley wrote his Lehi in the Desert, there's been wide agreement among Latter-day Saint scholars on roughly where the path of Lehi went. Inland from the Red Sea and then turning due east and arriving at a place on the Arabian Sea coast. The finding of Nahom, it's not simply a matter of finding a triconsonantal root that is vintage Arabic or vintage Semitic. It's that it's in a place that is consistent with those prior theories. The theories of Lehi's route already existed. We didn't invent them suddenly to match the place Nahom that had been found. They were already there. The place Nahom was found in the location where we expected it to be found. And if you go due east from Nahom, you arrive at really the one place on the Arabian Sea coast that fits all the requirements for Lehi's Bountiful. That, it seems to me, is a very unlikely thing to have accomplished by sheer chance.
Could it be possible that he saw it on a map somewhere?
It's possible that he could have seen it on a map. I don't rule that out. There was a map published in 1815 that indicated Nahom on the Arabian Peninsula. There's no evidence, as far as I know, of that map existing in North America by the 1820s. Some people have suggested, since there's a copy in the Dartmouth College Library, that Joseph Smith or Hiram Smith, who once went to a school connected with Dartmouth, or Solomon Spaulding even, who graduated from Dartmouth, used that map to formulate the Book of Mormon. The trouble is, according to Dartmouth College itself, they only acquired that map in late 1930 or early 1931, which is, I think, a little bit too late for Joseph Smith to have used it. I'm routinely written to by critics of the church who say there simply is no place in Arabia that can be called bountiful. Well, it so happens that when they're writing to me on my computer at home, I'm sitting under a blown-up picture of bountiful, what I consider to be bountiful in Arabia. And believe me, it looks very, very nice. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. The fact is the place exists, people have been there, it meets all the criteria for bountiful. And this notion that Arabia is nothing but sand dunes and barren wastes is simply not true. You get down to the Arabian Sea coast with the monsoon rains, you actually have some very fertile areas. That's what made the civilization in Yemen possible, where the Queen of Sheba came from. It's very different from inland Arabia, where the Bedouins live. These were settled civilizations down there that depended on heavy rainfall. Alma 710 is often cited by critics as evidence of Joseph Smith's incompetence, that the poor guy didn't even know where Jesus was born.
This assumption that he was born at Jerusalem, and of course any schoolboy knows that he was born in Bethlehem, is precisely the problem with a non-critical reading of the Book of Mormon text, because the Book of Mormon doesn't say he was born at Jerusalem. It says he was born at the land of Jerusalem.
We don't have evidence in the Bible of a land of Jerusalem around the city of Jerusalem, but we do have it in extra-biblical literature. There are materials, for example, from about 1200 BC that refer to a place called Beit Lahmi, which is almost certainly Bethlehem, as being a city of the land of Jerusalem. Then you have materials that purport to come from the time of Jeremiah, and in that document the Jews are taken captive from the land of Jerusalem, a phrase that doesn't occur in the Bible but does implicitly occur in the Book of Mormon. Was Bethlehem part of the land of the Bible? Well, even today, if you go to Bethlehem, you realize it's essentially a suburb.
Jerusalem, of course, back then, was the main political, cultural, historical, religious center of the Jews. Bethlehem is how far away from Jerusalem? What, 6 miles? Of course it's going to be in the land of Jerusalem.
And in the time of Lehi, it was apparently an area that was controlled by the town, the city of Jerusalem, which had a sphere of influence around it that was called, after it, the land of Jerusalem. So it isn't a mistake. It's not saying that Jesus was born in the city of Jerusalem. It's saying he was born in the land of Jerusalem, and that, we now know, fits the ancient usage.